This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
The government is aiming to reduce Australia's emissions by 62 to 70% by 2035 as the world strives to reach net zero by 2050. The target range was recommended by the Climate Change Authority and is based on 2005 levels. The plan has several new measures, including $2 billion for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. A new $5 billion net zero fund will be established within the National Reconstruction Fund to help industries decarbonise. $40 million will be set aside to speed up the rollout of curbside and fast electric vehicle charging. There'll be $85 million for frameworks to help households and businesses understand and improve their energy consumption, as well as $50 million for sports clubs.
No, never stop.
Never stop. Continue talking. Logorrhea.
Oh, yeah. I learned that word the other day. That's crazy.
You learned that just the other day?
Logorrhea, yeah. It's good stuff.
They've used it. They clearly, the author or authors unknown of the book that I'm reading, they use it. You know that Q book?
What Q
I was
book?
given this book. It's called Q. It's like a novel.
QAnon by Van Badham?
No, it's not that one. It's like an old, it's relatively old and it's a novel and it's kind of based around the Reformation and it's like historical fiction.
Oh, yes.
Abe gave it to me and I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but it's readable. It's good. Anyway, 300 days of flooding a year in Brisbane. That's what we're in for. Have you been looking up what you're in for locally at 3 degrees of warming?
The only thing that jumped out at me was the fact that $600 billion would be wiped for the Australian property market. And as a
landlord, that must be deeply upsetting. Really
live-in landlord. Live-in landlord. Do not slam me, thank you. I'm a live-in landlord. I just thought it was so funny they included that in the report. It was the most Australian thing I've ever heard in my life. It's just like, yeah, but how is it? Yes, we're headed for climate collapse at 3 degrees, but how is it going to affect the property market?
Yeah, there's a silver lining for Gen Z, right?
The crash in the market we've been hoping for. You will be able to afford a house.
Your whole family's going to die in the heat waves. However, you can buy a home, just not anywhere near the sea.
Boy.
Hey, Danger Dogs. This
Hello.
is, of course, Serious Danger. You know that. I'm Emerald. That's Tom. This is the Patreon feed. You're a special subscriber. You make the show happen. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for paying Mike and supporting us on Patreon. As you know, it's not an official Greens Party podcast, blah, blah, blah. This week, look, we're kind of continuing like some of my brain thoughts on just strategy and theory of change that I've been tossing around in my head. And a lot of these thoughts are probably even less formed than the ones that were on the weekly episode from last week. So, which is why we're punting them to you, the paid listeners you get.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, you people who pay money for this. Well, then you get the real dross just leaking out of everyone's brain.
The absolute slop from my ears. Because I want to dig into a little known topic. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's called climate change.
What? We don't care about that here at the Greens anymore. We've moved on to socialism and being anti-Semitic.
Yes, after completing our series on transgender ideology and why we must all adopt it, we've decided to figure out what this Bob guy was on about. So, yeah, climate change. I guess should we do it, Tom? Do you want to talk about it?
Well, yes, I'm excited to talk about it. Obviously, this is a important week to be discussing this. We've had this insane climate report, which I know we'll get into, and we are awaiting the Albanese Labor government's emission reduction targets for 2035. We're recording this on Wednesday evening. We're hoping to get it out as soon as possible. There's a chance that between the recording and the release, we have an update on that. If not, we'll definitely cover it on this week's show, I think, the weekly show. But yes, a whole lot going on in this space. The planet continues to cook. And is it fair to say that this particular issue, or the Greens' electoral project approach to the climate crisis, is a big factor in, or is at least looming large in your considerations and thoughts
Yeah.
around
That's
theory of change?
Yeah, I actually started thinking about this kind of before we had the risk assessment report, before we were coming up to these emissions reduction targets, more in the context of like falling investment in renewables and kind of the obstacles for the
Mm,
rollout of the renewable energy transition um, in Australia, and like how an electoral project like the Greens can actually do what is required to,
mm,
I guess, stave off the very, very worst of the climate crisis. It's already too late for some things, but it is not too late for many other things.
mm,
And I remember on an episode a little while back, like maybe even on a couple of episodes, I had quite confidently been like, well, the value of the Greens is a valuable project because we can potentially get the government to approve fewer coal and gas projects or stop approving coal and gas, and that has a massive impact because of Australia's outsized contributions to global greenhouse gas emissions as an exporter.
mm,
Um, but then, like, the more I think about it, I'm like, I struggle to actually visualize or like quite understand what the real lever for that is, because
mm,
like again, it comes back to that thing where it's like, in theory, maybe we've been like, well, the lever is the Greens are getting more popular, you win more and more votes, and Labor goes, oh, people like the Greens. If we want them to like us, we need to be better on climate change and follow the science, maybe, and stop approving
mm,
your coal and gas. But if you look at what's happened, I think it's like, it seems that climate in particular is one of those things that it's so easy for Labor to look like to say that they're doing something when what they're doing is so far from what is like desperately urgently needed. And it's not just a matter of like, well, maybe it's still a step towards socialism, or maybe it's a few more homes even though it's not enough, maybe like
mm,
we get 50-cent fares even though we don't get a fantastic free public transport network across the country. Like, when it comes to climate, it's like there's a very limited time frame,
mm.
um, and we cannot afford new coal and gas. Like, it's fucking urgent. And I'm like, like, how do you actually do that in the time frame that's required?
Well, also when the bad stuff that Labor does absolutely dwarfs the good stuff they're doing, right? Like
Yeah.
solar panels is completely dwarfed by approving a carbon bomb that will release billions of CO2 in the atmosphere and further cook the planet. So yeah, there's no sort of slowly or progress kind of thing when these are the kind of actions that
Mm,
we're talking about. And once again, I
yeah.
know we've talked about this before on the show, but yes, the lack of criticism coming at the Labor Party from the left or from a agenda that wants them to be more ambitious on climate is pretty
Mm,
remarkable, particularly when their political enemies, the coalition, are imploding over the question, completely rejecting the notion of even committing to the bullshit faraway target of net zero by
mm,
2050. It's
yeah.
it's remarkable.
Well, this is the thing. It's like, I think there's something about our parliamentary system, something about our electoral system where it still in many ways functions as a two-party system. Like, and there are a lot of efforts on the major parties' part to uphold that and to squash third parties' independence, the crossbench in general. And
Mm,
it's like, so yes, we land back at the, well, is it better than the alternative
mm,
being the Liberals? And it's so been so easy for Labor to be like, yep, we're better, and to say that they've solved the climate wars, when it is just so abundantly clear that they haven't. And I guess like one thing that I've been thinking this week is, oh, climate is finally back in the fucking news, because
mm,
like we've spoken about how climate kind of slipped off the agenda. It wasn't a major issue in the last federal election. It was revolving around nuclear, but
mm,
like we now have the the government is due to announce its 2035 emissions reduction target. That's part of their obligations under the Paris Agreement. It's these nationally determined contributions thing. So it's like Australia's contribution towards meeting those targets. And this week, finally, they released the Australia's first national climate risk assessment report, which we know that they have been sitting on for some time.
mm,
And only after the Greens and others, but like I would say principally the Greens, yes, were like, hey, can we see the report? What the fuck are you doing with this? Like, can we see the report? They finally release it. And it is absolutely, like, it is terrifying,
Mm.
obviously, to
I
rattle
haven't read
on.
it
I'm
because
sure
I feel
you've
like
all seen.
that means it's not real. If I've let you
Yeah,
read
that's
it,
right. Just
you'll.
don't, I pretend I do not see it. Um, I mean, based on current global commitments, the world is on track to see 2.9 degrees Celsius of warming this century. So forget 1.5, which is what Paris Agreement was meant to be aiming for. And
Hang on,
the
those are the
report,
commitments? That's not just the actions. Like they're actually what people have said, this is what we are committed to doing, if you know what I
yeah,
mean. Like,
that's what, well, this
like
is the wording that I've got is current
right,
global
right. So
commitments.
whether or
Yeah,
not even countries are going to
that's
do
true. That's
like
a good
honor those
point.
commitments,
That's a
even
really
if
good point.
everyone honors those commitments, it's
Yeah,
still almost 3 degrees of warming.
yeah. And
Oh,
as
why am I
critics,
laughing?
like people will be like, well, look at all the other countries. They've got shit targets. And like, yeah, some of them do. That doesn't mean that Australia shouldn't be doing more.
If China jumped off a bridge, would you do it as well?
Yeah, so true. Like
And
it
actually,
models a bunch
China
of
is
show. It has
doing
all these
pretty
different
incredible stuff when
scenarios.
it comes to renewable energy. But anyway, go on.
I know when the argument has always been, yeah, well, China's building new coal-fired power stations and whatnot. But yeah, models a bunch of warming scenarios. The things that these reports, these like risk assessment reports don't do is really go, okay, these activities, e.g., like for example, a new coal mine being approved
Mm.
will lead to these emissions, will lead to this amount of warming, will lead to these impacts. It kind of like chops them in half. So this is really only like this amount of warming leads to these impacts. So politically, it's like it's the messaging is a little bit wobbly, or it's kind of not as helpful because it's not being like new coal equals more heat wave deaths when like that is the scientific consensus.
Yes.
But for some reason the way that they structure the reports, it's not quite like that.
Oh, great. So we can all
But
just
yeah,
agree. Yeah,
40,
warming is bad. This sounds really bad. Man, I hope someone does this something about
yeah,
this.
yeah, it's
I hope
almost,
there's
it's like
nothing
that
that I have
passive
to. Anyway,
voice. It's
gas is an
like the
important part of the transition.
Israel-Palestine thing. It's
Yeah.
like if somehow the atmosphere were to be increased in temperature, um Brisbane
Jesus.
could flood 300 days out of the year. I think that must be
Mm,
a 3-degree warming scenario. 40 to
mm.
70% of species will be forced to move, adapt to the new conditions, or die out. Very good. Yeah, huge displacement due to sea level rise, massive disaster recovery costs, severe water security risks, heatwave deaths, etc., etc. Um, and as Larissa Waters, as the Greens leader, pointed out, I actually thought this was a good point. It's like the government had this report when they approved Woodside at
Oh,
the end of last
interesting.
week.
That's
Yeah,
that's
like,
that's weird.
yeah, almost as though they are not making decisions consistent with the need for climate action. But
Just sorry,
they
just
have,
on that, on the Woodside project, I've been a bit taken aback. All the coverage is based around, it seems to me, the Murujuga rock art,
mm,
which I absolutely recognise as being really
yeah,
important. And once again, solidarity to Raylene Cooper and all the people fighting to protect that important piece of cultural heritage. Thumbs up to that. But almost, I just see very rarely anyone asking Murray Watt, how many tons of CO2 is going to be released into the
yeah.
atmosphere of this, and how is this consistent with your other effects? To the Australian
I,
Conservation
mm,
Foundation's credit and the Climate Council as well, they've been condemning this decision pretty thoroughly across the board. Climate Analytics as well has also come out across it as the final approval gone through. So you have seen a bit of movement from the climate lobby talking about it. But yeah, I was just surprised that while the Murujuga rock art is a very important issue, it just seemed like that to be the totality of the focus, because almost
yeah,
all the conditions, I
interesting.
guess, related to the kind of air quality production of the project, as far as I could tell.
Yes, that's interesting. I mean, I did see that the reporting that I read was like talking about the conditions that the government had put on the approval around reaching net zero by 2050
Great.
and whatnot. But again, like that is not about the gas that is being exported, which the
Nope.
majority of it will be, and it will be burnt overseas. And that's what Australia does. That is Australia's fucking modus operandi or
Yep.
whatever for fucking over the climate, that we still just don't consider. And part of the argument, for a climate trigger in the approval of new fossil fuel projects. Although, and this is maybe a question that I'm unclear on, because we were talking about, Adam Bent is going to be the head of ACF, and the first thing they did after announcing that is they're saying we think that there should be a climate trigger in the government's new environmental laws. Well, they don't use that term that the Greens have been using, but they're like that these laws should consider climate impacts, blah, blah. I don't know if there's a likelihood or possibility that like there would be a climate trigger introduced that only takes account of emissions on site, like in Australia, as opposed to third scope emissions.
God.
Even so, like these projects do have significant emissions, even in Australia, because they have fugitive emissions, they have significant on-site emissions, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, sorry, coming back to what the government's doing, they by the time that this comes out, they may have already done it. They need to release their emissions reduction target for 2035. They have said, we're waiting on the advice from the Climate Change Authority. We need to do that as per the legislation. The advice from the authority has been delayed. Back in 2024, when they started consultation on this, they did already say, quote, the evidence we have considered so far suggests a 2035 emissions reduction target in the range of 65 to 75% below 2005 would be ambitious and could be achievable with additional action. The Greens, they want net zero by 2035, right? I think it's like 75% by 2030. And that's what, a lot of scientists and climate advocacy orgs are also calling for. But even, the authorities already said that. But they apparently hadn't, or I think now they have maybe, but the government said they were waiting on this advice from the Climate Change Authority before they made their decision. And it was delayed partly because of Trump, apparently. This was in the ABC that like Trump's presidency just creates such uncertainty on a global scale in a number of respects, but including in the renewables space, that it means there's a few more things to assess, and maybe they needed to change their assessment, but also delayed because of the unexpectedly, like a slower than expected rollout of renewable energy projects.
Right.
And this is what, like I said, this kind of prompted me. I've been looking at, in Queensland, the LNP has come in to government and cancelled a bunch of renewables projects. But there has been this mounting, like it seemed as though we were on the right track. And for a minute there, I was almost like, maybe the market will sort it out. Like maybe we'll just, because renewables is the new thing, it's going to be cheaper, it's all the rage, everyone wants it. And so, the market will see this as a great investment opportunity, and they're just going to build all these renewables, and we'll no longer need coal and gas, and we're going to be okay. It's not really working out that way though.
Okay, but in that moment, it felt good, right? Every now and again, if you allow
really
yourself to
good.
think that, you're like, maybe Tim Wilson's
so
right. Maybe the future is going to be awesome. And actually, maybe the market will sort it out. Wow, that'd be great.
That's right. I was like, innovation, entrepreneurs, I love them.
You were right, Malcolm. No. I'm so sorry.
Unfortunately, there have been a few roadblocks. There's this Bloomberg report that came out recently, which showed that in the first half of 2025, investment in solar and wind declined 64% compared to the same period last year, especially for wind. Wind farms declined. There was some speculation that could partly have been because companies were uncertain about the result of the May federal election and didn't want to jump in before they knew what was going on there and who was going to be in government. But even so, like it's a big drop. And there was, there's been recent reporting around, companies either pulling out of projects being cancelled, things like BHP, who said, we're going to be clean and green, we've got this renewables plan. They're now ditching their renewables projects and their emissions reduction targets.
Cool.
And it does seem a little bit of a worry that on the one hand, we've got mounting evidence that like, we're really fucked, we really need to do something. And renewable energy, which is, a key piece. Yes, there are other pieces, transport, agriculture, and so on. But like, we can't afford to be going backwards. You know what I mean?
Sure can't, and would really love to
No.
not do that. I
Yes.
heard, do you know Jason Hickel? Does that ring a bell? Have you seen this guy
No.
kicking around? He's really, really
No.
interesting guy. And I believe he said this recently on a Navarra media interview, but he's sort of saying, yeah, the narrative we all had in our mind was, oh, renewable energy will become so cheap. And so obviously people
Yeah.
will want to switch to that, and that'll fuel the transition. And yes, market forces will
Mm.
play a role here. But I'm pretty sure it was Hickel who pointed out, he said, no, it's not about like it being cheap. It's about the profit. Like, where is the profit? And as long as fossil fuels are
Mm.
still really profitable, okay, and as long
Yeah.
as fossil fuel companies and fossil fuel capital can use their power and influence to maintain that industry as long as possible, to maintain their
Yeah.
profits, that's what's going to happen, man. Unless you have
Yeah.
massive state intervention and a
Mm.
people powered movement to try and stop it. That's the way
Yeah.
it goes.
And yeah, like from a market perspective, why would you move from what's working to an
Yeah.
unknown effectively?
And because the market's timetable isn't based on the science. They don't give a shit about the science.
No.
It's like, well,
No.
okay, yeah, we'll move away from fossil fuels when it stops being profitable. But while there's still, money on the table, we'll keep
Yeah.
going for it, and we'll keep lobbying to maintain
Yeah.
our right to keep doing it, and we'll keep funding political
Yeah.
parties to make sure that we're allowed to.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that like I kind of have been thinking as well in Queensland actually today. Was it BHP? Don't quote me, but one of the big players has been like, we're closing coal mine operation,
Mm.
like at least one or more of our coal mine operations, because the royalties framework is just so difficult in Queensland. These really high royalties, we have to pay all these taxes, and it's so hard. So we're
Mm.
firing everyone, which obviously is like it's bullshit.
Yeah.
The higher royalties rate that Queensland Labor introduced only applied to coal super profits, and so it literally by definition means that only if you are making a lot of money do you have to pay the higher rate. And like just in general, yes, now that the coal price is slightly lower, the royalties that they're paying are nowhere near enough. But thinking in terms of a mechanism that
Mm.
actually might work to do what we need to do in Australia on climate, which is stop new coal and gas projects. Royalties, like raising royalties at a state level would be a key lever. And there's a strong argument for it because you get more money to pay for stuff like 50-cent fares.
Mm. Yes, hope so. But again, you've got a massive political fight on your hands. It opens up territory for your political enemies to attack you and say you're driving business out of the
Yeah.
country. But yes, as long as you're prepared for that fight and can make the case otherwise, then certainly
Mm.
go for it. I do not see that fight or level of commitment in the Australian Labor political party myself.
No, no, that's right. So coming back to the renewables stuff, it's like these projects are slowing down for a bunch of reasons, right? And one of them is a lack of transmission infrastructure. Strong arguments maybe for more government investment in that to link up these new projects with the grid. There's
Is that sorry? That was like, wasn't that powering the? What was it? Powering the nation. That was like a good Labor policy. That was
yeah,
about laying down lines to
was
make
it?
sure that we can get the power. Yeah, I think it was actually decent, but I do think
Yeah.
they're getting significant pushback, and the right and fossil fuel capital are getting a lot of political
Yes.
attacks, trying to go
Mm.
after all these projects and demonizing wind and solar as
Yeah.
destroying this beautiful country that we love.
Well,
Ironically,
exactly. And this is where I think this is because this is where I started just getting maybe deeping it. But like we've kind of spoken before about the problems of just repeating the mistakes of old with the
mm,
renewable energy transition. And it makes me wonder whether mass built like large scale renewable energy projects, whether it's the transmission infrastructure or also the projects themselves, are kind of a feasible approach because it's like imposing this top down solution to the climate crisis rather than bringing the community along necessarily.
mm,
And I genuinely, like I say this, I genuinely am asking this of myself, and I don't really know where I stand on it because on the one hand, I've said for a long time, and I still kind of think that, like, yeah, large scale renewables projects are just essential to meet
mm,
the targets that that the Greens want to meet, definitely. But time and again, yeah, like we are seeing so many projects falling over because communities are like, fuck you, coming in and
mm,
like building this thing that we didn't ask for and we don't know. Yeah, it's not a certainty it's not something we might be familiar with. It's on our land, or it is in our community, and pushing back on renewables projects to the point where, they're now being scrapped in Queensland. And I don't really know, like, yes, that idea of kind of like a centralized planning, or like the government imposing these things, or big corporations imposing them on communities, the kind of the approach of being like, well, we need this much energy, this is how much we're using, and we're probably going to keep using more, and so we just need to have enough renewables to power that, when it's like, should we be thinking maybe we need to use less energy? But in a lot of people's minds, that means going backwards. That's like reducing living standards. But I don't know. I don't know if it's
We're going to
possible
eat the
to
bugs.
fix the
We
problem.
want everyone to eat the bugs,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that our plan?
Yeah. Want
I
to
mean,
live,
Jason
the
Hickel
Greens want us
again.
to live like cavemen again. Yeah.
I mean, it would be less stressful. You spend less time on your phone. That'd be pretty good.
So true. Reduce screen time.
I mean, maybe this is another topic sometime, but the idea of degrowth or green
Yeah.
growth, that kind of battle. I mean, Jason Hickel in that interview was sort of talking about this idea and basically blowing up the idea that endless growth on a finite planet, yada yada yada, is kind of ridiculous, and talking about that in a serious way is important, but perhaps that's a side conversation. I mean, I think the renewable
Yeah.
energy projects, again, I'm not across it all. I'm sure there is a best practice out there. I'm sure there are examples of renewable projects working quite fine. There was certainly a time period in which, I mean, again, on the south coast of Victoria, I remember people being like, oh, wind farms are a bit ugly. You'll see a little bit of resistance within the community. But either that wasn't representative of the general sentiment, or they were just too small to stop anything, that didn't have that much of an effect. There's got to be a way to address those concerns while still not engaging with the crazy shit of like, they're killing the birds, they're keeping me up at
Yeah.
night, they're killing the whales, yada, yada, yada. There's got to be a way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I like,
And
because
infuriating, particularly
just,
when you've got the same people making objections about these offshore wind projects, for example, and then are perfectly happy for massive oil companies to drill around the Bight, or around the 12 Apostles in Victoria, for example. Apparently, one's fine, whereas building the wind farm that's got to try and save us from environmental collapse, that's the bad one. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think, like, I mean, Alan Kohler in the ABC, in his piece on this, I think maybe finished the article by saying, quote, as for the full electrification of the electricity grid needed to achieve net zero, it will likely either have to be done despite protesting farmers, or through the near universal adoption of household and business rooftop solar with batteries, or with nuclear power.
Whoa.
And that's kind of the reality that you come up against. And it doesn't feel like the just trying to do it without community consent is working. And so I'm like, could we have near universal adoption of rooftop solar?
Yeah, that seems the most viable option out of those, just
Yeah.
based on the incredible amount of uptake of solar already in Australia. It's pretty remarkable, actually, how widespread it is and how deep that penetration is. But yeah.
Well, interestingly, I think in that report, that Bloomberg report, that was like, investment in renewables is down, but that investment in batteries wasn't necessarily, like, more people are buying batteries, because that's the thing, right? Is like that people get to a certain point where then the storage, the what's the fucking word for it? Now I'm not going to be able to think of it, but it's the term for when you can turn energy on and use it when you need it, basically.
Dispatchable.
Yes, dispatchable power. Like, they run into that problem for when, sun's not shining, wind's not blowing, blah blah blah. So we need batteries. So that's a big piece of the puzzle, I think. Yeah. I come back to then thinking about, because then I'm like, okay, well, we're talking about even just the renewable challenge, even just Australia's domestic energy emissions. That's enough of a problem on its own. But that is genuinely, like, that is small fry on the global scale. But what is not necessarily, and particularly proportionate to our population, are our exports. And so I think, like, all of this discussion around the emissions reduction target, part of me just is like, I don't even fucking care about our domestic emissions reduction target, because, like, none of it barely matters compared with whether you're still approving new coal and gas.
Well, it matters if we're going to get COP26 or whatever the fuck it is. Is it 26 or 27?
Oh,
It's
we get
going to
to
be in
host it.
2026, but we're going to host it, but it's number 27. Like, that's what I'm really invested in. No?
Yeah, yeah.
I see what you
I
mean. I mean, like, I find it difficult to tell anyone to, like, don't be a doomer about the climate crisis because we have so much information to tell us the contrary. And yes, we're going to get this target from a government this week that is led by a party that is funded by the fossil fuel industry that has just opened a massive
yeah,
carbon project. And yes, they've received some criticism and analysis and interrogation from the media, but not really. I mean, I was listening to Insiders last weekend and they were talking about what this target's going to be. And at no point on that panel did anyone say, what does the science say? It was all about what is politically achievable and is that
yeah,
realistic and all this kind of stuff. And, is it ambitious? Is it doable? And of course, as if the idea of how doable these targets or achievable these targets are
mm.
isn't deeply connected to the political project or the political action that you want the
Yes.
government or expect the government to do. It's just like there's
Mm.
just a limited version of what the Australian government could possibly do to address the climate crisis, which,
Yeah,
spoiler alert, is not working at the moment, but that can't possibly
yeah,
change. So, what's the most politically viable and the one that will have the least political blowback for this government for them to come up with in these targets? It's
do you think
disgraceful.
that the Greens are still having an impact on that question of what is politically viable? Like, is that it? Does that factor into these calculations? If you're going to accept that framing and be like, this is the game that they're playing, they don't give a shit about the science,
Mm.
but they care about votes, they care about politics. Um, are they going to be thinking about the Greens when they're setting these targets?
Probably not. Who knows what happens in these people's sick little minds? I mean, again, when again, I find it hard to really get a read on what the 2025 election tells us about where Australians are at when it comes to climate action. Like because the safeguard mechanism was dealt with relatively early in the term. Um, there was a brief moment of resistance and debate around it. We talked about it on the show. Um, the Greens ultimately wave that legislation through. We talked about the critique of that, or our recognition of that, and perhaps they didn't
Mm,
have much other choice to say. But it really did feel like, in terms of targets and climate action, was somewhat put on the back burner. Then closer to election day, we do everything we can to point out the fact that Labor continues to open new fossil fuel projects, and well, we all know what happened. So why would Labor be pushed in any way to
yeah,
care about this, or to let the threat from their left or for more ambitious climate action really influence their thinking? They're probably more electorally concerned maybe about some kind of teal independent vibe, but even then, they've got such a
yeah.
massive majority. Why care about it?
Well, and they have the complete support of mainstream media, as you've been
Yes.
pointing out, in like applying very little, if any, scrutiny to their climate policies when it comes to like all they have to do is do a little something. And the media, again, because they're looking at it through this like political race frame, they're
Mm,
like, oh, what is the political calculation here? Labor has ceded some ground.
yeah.
This is what's going on here. They're not looking at it through a lens of what does this mean for the fucking heat waves and the sea
The
level
climate.
rises and the climate and the science.
And it's almost as soon as the Greens do nominate a target or they make their position clear, the media will be like, well, obviously no one's going to do that because the Greens said it. Like, so the Greens are
Yes.
automatically ridiculous and extreme. It's like the 75% reduction target we were talking about last time came from the Climate Council. Now, the
Yeah.
Climate Council was what happened after Tony Abbott shut down Labor's own climate commission. Okay, so it was Labor backed. It's Amanda. These are all Labor friendly people. This is the organisation that laid out the targets that the science tells us we need to meet. The Greens say we agree with this, the Climate
Yes.
Council, and yet we're dismissed as crazy lunatics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it almost, that's right. It almost makes you wonder. It's like, would it be better if the Greens didn't talk about it? Because
Reverse
then it gives
psychology. We say
Labor,
we want more
yeah.
fossil fuel projects.
Sometimes I think this, that it's like, it almost makes it harder because Labor hates doing anything that the Greens
Right.
want so much. Like, yeah, I don't really know because obviously it's worked both ways. Like sometimes the Greens say something and Labor pinches it. But like it's true that they'll never do exactly what the Greens say. And so when you're talking about something like a number on target, you can almost be certain that Labor will not adopt that, even though it is the target, the number advocated by the experts, like by independent bodies. I don't know. And like that's where I wonder, yeah, maybe it is better for like are the NGOs better placed if they were actually going to do their job? Maybe Adam as head of ACF will be able to do this. Are they better placed to achieve the kind of policy change that we need like while the major parties are still in government? Because I honestly, like I said, yeah, I'm really struggling as a green hack, like as someone who deeply believes in the project of the Greens, and as I've spoken about, I think like the Greens have enormous capacity as an electoral project and a movement to achieve positive change. But I'm like, but on climate, where it matters, I actually am not seeing the pathway. I don't know what it is right now.
And do you, right, you don't see the pathway with the Greens taking the approach they currently are? Can you foresee a more radical approach that
No,
gets more
no,
results? No.
I don't mean like, oh, I've got the answer and the Greens aren't doing it.
Well, then what am I paying
Like,
$3 a month to listen to this shit for?
yeah. No, I don't know what else you could be like, yeah, I can't think of a better strategy than the Greens have been trying, which is like be loud, be annoying, scare Labor by trying to demonstrate support from their voters for better policies and hope that Labor gets scared enough of losing their seats that they then do the better things. But again, it Labor like does shit, like it does barely anything. The media reports it as Labor's doing something. And most ordinary people, unfortunately, are like, well, I guess Labor's doing something.
Well, again, because in our two-party system, in the way that we're framed to think about these things, you look at the alternative government, at least, the coalition, and it's okay. It's the crazy nuclear people, or it's. Do you see Andrew Hastie said he's going to quit the front bench if the coalition signs up to net zero again? Like he's supposed to be
No.
handsome shoulder, future soldier, future prime minister guy. Like I believe
Wow.
someone talked about him being a moderate at some point, but that's his position. He will
Yeah.
quit in protest if they sign up to net zero again, right? So that's the alternative. So the bar is so extraordinarily low that Labor can say, yeah, hey, at least we're not those guys. We're doing, some things.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't, yeah, like I said, I don't know what it almost makes me wonder. And I think I'd have to go back and look at the full email. We got an email from Andrew McLean, who is a former Greens candidate in Queensland. And he was kind of responding to the conversation that we had around theory of change in the last weekly episode and talking about the eco commune, effectively, the eco village that they have up in Mullaney. And part of me does think, like, hey, maybe mum and dad were right. Like, you just got to go fucking live on a commune and just do that. Like, maybe I have, and I know I have directly on this show before been like, no bullshit. That just allows the capitalist system to remain intact while you operate to, parallel to it, etc. But if we're going, okay, either we have to build this large scale renewables infrastructure that we haven't been able to do quickly enough so far, or nuclear, which is not as viable right now as renewables, or near universal adoption of rooftop solar. Are you better off just doing like a really local level grassroots kind of community support approach where you help build small scale like renewables cooperatives, or getting solar on roofs? I'm losing my, am I who
Well,
am I?
no, there's nothing
I
there's nothing bad with that approach in one's own personal life as individuals. That's all fine. But we're talking about political project here. We're talking
yeah,
about
and again, how do you stop the new coal and gas projects? That's
yeah.
yeah, come back to that.
One alternative would be like the more radical approach would be the Greens would say, like, okay, so they release these targets, they're pathetic. The next time Labor approves a new fossil fuel project or what have you, the Greens could say, all right, this is it. Remember how everyone was saying get back to Bob Brown roots and care about the environment? This is what this looks like. We are boycotting, or we are withholding our support for any legislation about for the Labor government to get anything through the Senate whatsoever until they change their approach to the climate crisis. Every speech we give, every point of action to us is going to be entirely focused on and targeted at this Labor government and their record on the climate crisis, because it's too late. We cannot afford to waste any more time. We're not the wreckers. They are the wreckers. Look at what they're doing to the environment. Look at who they're funded by. Recognize our enemy in this fight is not just a technical challenge or an engineering problem. It is class warfare. And the people that run our society don't give a shit about the climate crisis or your environmental future.
So the Greens do that, and then we potentially go to a double dissolution, like an election, or and I mean, I don't
win.
know.
Greens
Are the Greens in it? Are the Greens in a strong enough position with within this media landscape, within the current context of Australian politics, like to actually then get what we want, which is presumably Labor blinks or has to do something like banning new coal and gas. I don't know. Like that's a big gamble.
It's worth a go, though, isn't it? What's the worst could happen? It fails, and then we're back to no power whatsoever. I mean, we're used to that.
Yeah. Well, as I was talking about last week, like there are many other things that the Greens can do.
Yes. Okay.
Well, yeah. Speaking of, actually, I wanted to talk about this because thinking of electorate officers and what the Greens can do when they're elected. Did you hear about Renee Coffey, the new Griffith MP?
No, what was going on there?
Electorate office?
She closed it as well. Okay, so Albanese's permanently closed his office, which is insane to me, remarkable. And the idea
she's
that
barely opened hers, and she's like, "Oh, I don't like this. What? Who are these people?" Ugh.
Now that was climate protesters.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and this is the thing, like, it was reported initially as she's closed her office, citing like harassment of staff.
Yep.
By protesters. The media, first of all, is like, we don't know what about, without bothering to ask or find out. We don't know what it was about, but Albanese also closed his office due to Palestine protests. Someone commented, like, it was quite easy to get the information that it was actually climate protesters who were protesting her government's decision to approve Woodside and this massive new gas project. But like, they didn't report that. And even when they kind of added that caveat that, we've now been told it was climate protests, they still reported it uncritically as uncritically reported Renee Coffey's claims that, her staff had been harassed, it was unsafe, whatever. Even when protesters who were there have literally posted photos, they might even be footage, that it's like, it's like just a small group of like smiling people. Apparently, staff came out, like had a peaceful exchange with the protesters. Like it's literally just bullshit. She's just making this shit up, and it is getting reported because she doesn't want to have to deal with people coming to her office and holding her to account on her government's decisions. And like, she just got fucking elected. And what a loss for Griffith. But like, that's one of her first things that she's done as a new member for Griffith, is being like, this is the one.
Permanent?
This is in theory. No, I don't think it's permanent, but I think she, whatever, has temporarily closed it. But it's like, great. I hope more people go out and protest peacefully at her office, because she needs to learn that you can't just fucking hide away. You wanted this job. Be accountable to the people.
Oh, the people are annoying though. Like, you just want them to support you every 3 years and then just go away for a little bit, I reckon.
And all those girl boss new fucking Labor MPs are also, they've all accepted their Qantas Club membership, of course, which Greens MPs rejected.
Oh, could they send it to me?
Yeah.
I've been downgraded from gold. Anyway, that's a whole other podcast.
That's another episode.
Did you ever have that when you're working in Michael's office or in any offices? I mean, yeah, I guess you had individual people who might have pretty strong views about what the Greens were doing necessarily, but not like necessarily a group protesting at the front.
This is the interesting thing, is that like we had heard about, and I think we've heard, from the police about previous members like calling the police on constituents,
Mm.
all this sort of thing. Like, to be honest, no, probably because A, we aren't as scared of constituents. Like, we're just not going to do that. And
Mm.
B, like, yeah, we're probably doing what we said we would do. And so people won't be as surprised if, by the way that the Greens vote and act. That's not to say that like everyone is super happy all the time. Obviously, you get complaints. You do get people like harassing you on the phone. I think the ones that I can think of, like during COVID, it wasn't great, but I think it was worse for the government MPs.
Mm.
During the abortion debate,
Mm.
like we would have people coming in and being horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I do think there's just something about, like MPs who are like, wait, I have to actually talk to these people. I have to. No, I want to
Mm.
go. I want to go to Parliament. I thought this was about going to Parliament and sitting
Mm.
in my fancy chair and giving speeches. Like, that is what I think is, again, like a fundamental difference in the way that the Greens have used, and I believe should continue to use, their
Mm.
power, their position as an MP. Is it like it all like it revolves around the electorate office, because that's your shop front for
Yeah.
contact with the electorate. It's not about fucking Parliament,
Mm.
you know?
Great. Yeah,
That was a
that's a good
tangent.
example. No, no, no. That's interesting. Yes. What for the role of protest and direct action then? If do you see
Yes.
much hope in that path moving forward,
Yeah.
and what the Greens can do to support those movements and people who are going straight to the source.
Well, that's the thing though, because they have made, like, there have been so many legal
Mm.
crackdowns, quote
Mm.
unquote, on direct action, that it does make it a massive risk for anyone who wants to take part in it. And even though, like, yeah, I don't know, like that does seem like kind of the last resort, but you can delay projects, you can maybe make it a lot more difficult. Like, you can mean that is something that's built into the sort of risk assessment or the business assessment of organizations that want to open a new coal mine,
Mm.
that, oh, I'm going to have to deal with these fucking pesky protesters.
Mm.
But there's only so many people who can like get locked up or afford, a $50,000 fine.
Mm.
That's a tricky one.
Yeah. And I believe I said this before on the show, maybe to you or maybe someone else, but uh no, I believe it was maybe the Jared Mazza episode. My
Mm.
theory is that it will take another massive disaster of some description. It will
Yeah.
take another horror show of a bushfire season. The last one we had in 2020 was, of course, immediately, followed by COVID.
Mm.
So I think that the potential for political change and outrage in that particular moment, remember how much we hated Scott Morrison and the I don't hold a hose, and the climate anger
Yeah.
around that was almost immediately kneecapped by the presence of the pandemic. But that's my theory. I feel like that's the thing it's going to have to take to put the Labor government on the ropes and to truly hold them accountable and have a broad base of broadly progressive people reckon with the fact that
But
this party does not have their best interests at heart.
yeah, but it's like we had the moment, we had like a kind of almost a climate election, and that doesn't mean that we got adequate policy reform or more renewables necessarily, or, fewer coal and gas approvals.
In what, 2022?
Yeah.
You can't counting that as a climate election. Yeah. See, I don't. Yeah. What is it? What makes a climate election? I suppose
Well, I
is
don't
an
know,
important.
but arguably, like, we had those moments, and it did feel like, I don't know, there was a mood for, and like I think, yes, a lot of people probably were voting for climate action. That didn't mean that they got it.
Mm.
I know, like I know I'm kind of being a little bit doomer, and I don't necessarily mean that it's hopeless and we can't do, we can't do it. We're not going to be able to do what we need to. Like,
Mm.
certainly a part of me feels that way, and probably a lot of other people do too. But I don't necessarily believe that. I think that it's like, it probably is possible. I'm just not totally sure what it's going to be. that makes that happen. And maybe it's everything at once. Maybe that, again, the answer that we kind of always give, we're like, just try everything. It's every tool in our kit. Like, it's the direct action for people who can do that. It's pressure from the NGOs to maybe push the major parties in the right direction, particularly by building a case that there is a strong public demand for this change. It's that thing of like political education and making something seem like the common sense, which is something that Greens MPs can do using their platform. It would require a change to media reporting. It could happen through maybe a big change in the makeup of Parliament, that maybe the Greens will be in a legislative position to be able to secure reforms that stop new coal and gas approvals or reduce domestic emissions. Like it could just be the market being like, maybe renewables is the go now. It could be that states increase their resource royalties to the point where new coal and gas projects become less economically feasible. These are all, maybe the point is that it could be communes. It could be more communes. It could be rooftop solar. It could be
this show, Labor Party. People might be listening to this, and the Labor Party has announced a 100% emissions reduction target by 2035.
Yes,
maybe.
That's right. And they're going to stop all new coal and gas. Like, yeah, it could be all of those things. I think that the Greens certainly have a role to play in many of those things too. But I guess I just want to be like, hey, is anyone else feeling like this? Let me know.
She gets more. We need a Ketan Joshi back, or another expert. Ketan is like, he knows how fucked it is, but also is much more across all the good stuff that's happening at the same time. So
yeah,
I think we need one of those.
And there is good stuff happening.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck out there, everybody. Yes,
geoengineering.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
That's what we're gonna do.
Yes, that's right. What are we putting a bunch of mirrors in the atmosphere and reflecting the sun?
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Cool shit like that. We'll keep you updated, everybody. Thank you as always for supporting the show. Remember, you can switch to a year support model if you so wish. We give you a $4 discount for doing that. Yeah, it's like $32 to support Serious Danger via the Patreon for 12 months. And you get all this kind of fantastic, uplifting bonus content like this discussion about the future of the climate crisis. Also,
follow me live on my meltdown journey. Each episode, my thoughts become less coherent. My political ideology more unhinged. Who knows?
Follow everyone. She becomes an eco-fascist and moves over to the right.
God, no, stop me there.
If you're in Melbourne, want to remind you that we are doing a live show to celebrate 200 episodes on November the 1st at the Comedy Republic at 4 p.m. Tickets are on sale now. I believe they're selling like hotcakes. We're going to announce a very special guest very shortly, and we're going to, celebrate 200 episodes of the show and farewell Emerald from the weekly release schedule. So we'd love to see you there.
Yay.
Bye.
Bye.
Serious Danger Australia.